Alright, what's good YouTube? So this is without question going to be the best tutorial I ever make on this channel. Various tips and tricks that every single producer needs to know and doesn't. This was inspired by a question that one of you asked me on my Instagram at FinnaFinesse, saying what are some of the things you wish you knew when you first started producing? Things that if I had known them, I would probably be like a billionaire by now. And yeah, overall, this whole video is going to be a rant, but trust me, if there was one video I make that you should watch from beginning to end, it's going to be this one. Also, real quick before this video starts, if you're watching this now, I've probably released like my 50K FLP collab loop kit on my YouTube completely free. It's a bunch of FLPs with a little bit of loops in there as well as a couple of drum sounds that I added to it just as like a gift to give away for you guys if you guys want to collab. So make sure to go check that out. And yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, so let's start this video off with like the biggest tip that every single producer needs to know, and probably the biggest thing I wish I knew when I first started as a producer. Making beats constantly with a consistent schedule is insanely important to getting better and succeeding as a producer. It's unbelievable how many like starting producers get this wrong for so long. I know I did for like so many years where like I would take like a month off like not making beats, and I think to myself like, oh, a month later when I come back, I'm gonna be that same producer I was a month before, you know? It's actually not at all how it works. You're actually gonna be taking steps back, because when you make beats, let's say you're the worst producer ever. Everything you put in your beat sucks. You're brand new to this, like you're not doing anything right. I promise you, there's always gonna be like one thing that you do right. It might be the drum kit you used, the 808 you used, you know, it might be the sounds, it might be the VST, whatever. When you go into your next beat that you make, you're gonna take in the things that you did well in the previous projects while avoiding the things that you did wrong, and that's how you improve. And like over time, if you just like leave for like a month and a half making beats, you're gonna start to like forget those same foundations that are helping you grow your sound, and you're actually gonna be taking steps back and starting from more brand new. This is so goddamn important, guys. Like I can't even stress it enough. Just be consistent and just make things. Also, going to the second point that I want to talk about, export and arrange your goddamn stuff. Specifically exporting. Like maybe you don't need to stress arranging if you're a newer producer, but like the importance of just putting your stuff out there is so important, because one, you want to get your music through as many ears as possible, because no matter how many times you listen to it, you can't just pick the stuff you like, because what you like that you make won't always correlate with what's actually good that you're producing, because it depends on what other people think at the end of the day. So you need other people to be listening to your music. It can't just be your opinions, and you can't just stick to your project files and not have them put out there. On top of the fact, you lose opportunities when you do this. And three, there are certain things I promise you that you're going to notice wrong with your beats, or little critiques that you're not going to hear in FL Studio when making it, but you're only going to hear in the MP3 file or WAV file afterwards when you export it. So moral of that story, export your goddamn stuff and arrange your stuff too. Make that a habit. I know it sucks. I know it's repetitive, and that's the thing that's the polar opposite of what we producers like, but it's fundamental to succeeding as one. Which, speaking of exporting, next tip, know how to like properly export your project files. Biggest mistakes I see is exporting in WAV file. The reason you don't want to do that is because WAV files are way too big, and when you send stuff to artists, you lose the ability to like conveniently send stuff through like DMs and whatnot when you're sending in waves, because the file size is going to be too big for things like Instagram or like Gmail and whatnot, and they're not going to be able to hear your beats. So export an MP3 file. If you get a placement, they're just going to ask you to send the stems anyway, so don't like stress that kind of stuff. Also, when you are exporting your projects, like you don't need to do like 450 like kilobyte bitrate, 512 point sync, split mixer tracks, high render quality McGee. Project files like do not need to be like the perfect quality. That's not going to make the difference between a beat that gets placed and a beat that doesn't. If your beat is good, it's like the 160 is like perfect, and like as for resampling quality, like 64 will get the job done. Also, you don't have to like split your mixer tracks, and you don't need to like export everything separately. Generally, you just don't need to overdo this kind of stuff, because like rendering and exporting over time as a producer through years is gonna like take up actually a significant amount of time, because like you can reduce at least twice as much time as you spend exporting if you just make the project smaller, and it's not gonna matter anyway when you're sending the beats to artists. So like, what's the point? I take it back what I said originally. This is probably like the biggest like trick or mistake that I wish I knew when I first started producing. A bug I always had when I export projects, I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but I'm sure some of you, when you export, have you ever had it so like FL Studio freezes, so it kind of just like stops at 0 or it stops at 100 and the project never actually exports? The reason that happens, and I only like just fixed this a few months ago, you need to make sure that your resampling quality here is the exact same in your mixer resampling settings in your audio settings through FL Studio. Then the second thing you need to make sure you do is go into audio, project general settings, and uncheck this circular panning law. I don't know what circular panning law is, but all I know is ever since I started doing these two things, no matter how big the project file is, I never have this issue anymore, and it always exports everything I make. Trust me, just do this in advance, because like it is the biggest like vibe and motivation motivation killer to have to like make this super nice project that eventually like you go to export it and FL Studio just like won't let you. Do not let this issue like ruin you, trust me. But anyway, getting back on track. So let's say I'm gonna go export this project, right? I go export and I go MP3. Again, not WAV file, MP3. And this is gonna be the next tip for this video that's super important. Stay organized as a producer. It's so goddamn important. The more and more you make stuff that you just say organized and you make it super easy for yourself to like find things and go back in your project files and just have everything organized the same and arranged and whatnot. So like right here, for example, when I export my project file into an MP3, I know exactly where I need to go. I have like months organized like this for every single beat that I make months. So like if I were to go in July beats, for example, I have everything listed here, and you'll notice it's all the same, which is super important because when you export, like I did when I first started as a producer, and I know a lot of like newer producers do this issue because I see it all the time. Don't just like give your project file a name or something random, the first thing that comes in your head, because you don't want to take like the 5 seconds to think of a name and put your name in the front and then the tempo and then like the vibe of the beat. You need to make it a habit to do this specific structure that I'm showing you right here. Have your name in the front and then dash, put any sort of name, the first thing that comes into your head, then have the tempo, and then in brackets, what you want to do is just like write down general traits or like the vibe of the actual beat itself. The reason that you do all these things, one, the name is because when you send stuff to artists or you send stuff to engineers, you don't want them forgetting who the beat came from because they're always getting beats sent to them. You want them to know your name. Very important. Same thing with collabing also. The reason you put the name there is not only because it's super easy to like go back and like have all your stuff organized, but also because a lot of people don't understand this. When you send stuff to artists in these studio sessions, I swear to God, they're like so out of it that they are literally making all their hit songs just off the very first thing that pops into their head, the very first thing they read or see. And most of the time that's going to be the beat that they're actually rapping. So that's why you want to name your projects, because you'd be surprised at like how many songs were completely based around whatever the producer initially named them. One of my favorite examples of this is one of my favorite songs of all time, Goosebumps. The original Q-Beats loop that was sent to Cardo in this pack, it's called Goose_bump_65 BPM. So it's no coincidence that it was called that, you know. Travis Scott probably saw Goose_bump and then he made the actual song and it ended up becoming like a billion stream hit, you know. So yeah, if that's not enough to convince you to name your project files, nothing is. As for the reason that you do the tempo, when you're sending stuff to engineers, it's for some reason really difficult in Pro Tools to like find the tempo of like the project file that you send them, but you're gonna save your engineer quite a bit of time just doing this for them, as well as it might help maybe with the rap or whatnot to know the tempo. And in brackets, the reason you put like the general vibe is because when you're playing stuff for artists, or let's say your friends or anyone in particular, maybe it's like an A&R or something like that, they're gonna want specific sounds. They're not just gonna want the same like generic Southside future trap. It totally depends on the vibe. It totally depends on what they're specifically looking for. And you don't want to have to like scroll through all your beats, especially when you're making more and more of them every day, and just click through everything and just like hope that the beat that you play is going to be the exact thing that you're looking for. Because when you're playing stuff to them, it's going to be so much better organized and you're going to have such an easier time getting them to rap on something. But yeah, what you don't want to do is something like this. Like this is my 2019 old beats folder where like everything's all over the place and like the names are ridiculous, like Metro Cheese 2 cuz too good to lose 2-0 version, a little flockin' but not much, drums going brazy, fire beat, I do what I want when I feel like it. Ooh, sample cheese 7 soon with different 808 pattern. Like you can't do stuff like this. Like this is so unorganized and this is just ridiculous. And like people are not gonna take you serious if you're sending like this kind of stuff to them. Like let's be real. But yeah, you want like every single month that you have organized in separate folders to look something like this. And yeah, that's all super fundamental stuff. Okay, so next tip, also the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to actually like sending stuff to artists and being organized with your project files. Don't send them like 50 different beats and like just crossing your fingers as if like, oh, I hope he likes this one. It's so easy nowadays for like an artist to go find a beat like on YouTube. They always have producers hitting them up. They have their managers who will have beats. They have engineers who will have beats. Like it's not hard for them to actually get beats. So when you get that chance, you need to be efficient. You need to be quick, which again, going back to being organized. But yeah, you need to be efficient with sending your beats. At most, like honestly, like sending like 10 is gonna be good. Okay, so now let's get into more like miscellaneous set of tips. Okay, so the next thing I wish I knew when I started, this one's also very big, like especially nowadays, because like people don't understand that being successful as a type beat producer is not the same formula as being successful as a producer who gets placements in this industry. The difference being that people don't understand is that with type beats, the real goal is just to make it as loud as possible. Like you want like plus 6 dB, super loud, because YouTube is not gonna have it loud from the beginning. And you know, the louder your beats, the better, more people are gonna hear them, less less people are gonna skip them. But that involves the process of like compressing, limiting, like saturating your beats like crazy. And you don't want to do that because like when you are sending stuff to an artist, when it goes to the actual engineer, he's gonna do that processing anyway. And you don't hear it now, but when you hear it afterwards with the finalized product, if your drums are already clipping like crazy, you have compressed like crazy, when the engineer puts that stuff on to blend the vocals with the actual beat itself, it's just gonna sound like distorted and like glitchy and just not good in general. Personally, what I do by default is that I always just have a saw clipper, but then I have these two EQs because I've been using them since I started producing, where I just like boost the high ends. I might just like boost like around here. I normally just mess with this knob right here until like I find something that I like. Sometimes I don't. Again, it's going all by ear. But apart from like EQing to make your drums stand out, putting a soft clipper, you don't need to like do insane amounts of mixing. Plus, because like I know I'm gonna see them in the comments, did you know you actually mix your beats? It's like, yes, I know you can make them sound better with other things, but like, do you really have the time to be doing that? Like, you also need to be able to make beats quickly, and you need to be efficient and consistent with your system. So you don't want to have to like mix it like crazy and spend like 30 minutes making the beat sound perfect, when in that same 30 minutes you could have made a completely different beat that would have, without being mixed, sounded better than whatever else you were trying to mix in here with the original beat. Okay, speaking of masters, here's a little cool tip and trick that you guys definitely do not know about. So whenever you have like a mixer state that you like, what you can do is go into like file and then save mixer track state as. And what that allows you to do is save the arrangement of the presets so you can have them preloaded. And that's not the big tip, but even so, like for me, prime example, like right here, like I have like so many pre-mixed sounds and whatnot that like I use all the time in my beats that just make certain things sound like a little bit better. But the big one I want to talk about right here is the one I have at the very top that's called !reset. This is crazy. Like, this has been saving me so much time ever since I started doing this. Literally what this is a saved version of just a completely blank template. And what that does is if I'm ever using a project file and let's say I want to export stuff and I want to make it a little bit more organized, or I just want to like start from scratch, or I just want to remove like a bunch of effects and stuff that are on my master or a mixer state, what that does is just going to reset everything and basically have it go from scratch. Just to make this, literally all you have to do is just save the mixer state of a completely like empty insert track and then just name it !reset, and then you'll have that in your arsenal. So like every time you just want to like remove all the plugins or just be more organized or just have a quick way to get everything off of your master, this is the way you do it. At least most of y'all don't know about that one, so that's a little sauce for y'all. So how can you not subscribe and like this video? Like, come on. Okay, so next tip. I know a lot of y'all want to collab with producers. This one makes me mad more than anything because I'm working with a lot of producers nowadays, and even like industry guys that like you work with like are still doing this. When you send an exported zipped loop package to a producer to collab with, don't just like send a project file that you like but you don't know what to do with it and you don't want to bother finishing it or like organizing it, so you're just like, oh, here you go, you can take that, oh, let's collab, but the beat's like already drum, you got the drums going, you got the melody going. When you send a collab, unless you have like a pre-laid out melody that requires you to like record things in Edison, just send them the melody or the drum pattern that you're using in the pattern block. Don't overdo it and have everything pre-arranged and just like all over the place and be super undecisive with what you're doing. Give them space to do their part and be creative themselves because they're producers after all, You can tell that one's very personal to me. Continuing on the topic of sending things to other people, if you are a goddamn loop maker, I swear to God, if you guys do not cut out the tail end of your goddamn sounds when they're cutting out through the choruses or verses of your track, I am going to snap. You need to make sure that when you're making a loop, you're either doing what I did right here and you're recording it into a WAV or MP3 file so you can control the cutoff, so like when sounds transition, it doesn't fade in, because you gotta consider that when you were sending a loop, they're gonna be chopping it up like crazy. So like if I had not done this, like for these sounds, for example, if you look right here, you can see there's tail end in this sound, there's tail end in this sound, and if you was to chop right here, every time you'd have it playing the loop, it would be hitting these parts of the notes, and it's just gonna sound like so weird, and it's just gonna literally ruin your loops. Like, personally, I find that this is the best way to do it, but another way you can do it is just go into your mixer and then just like create an automation clip right over here with the volume knob and then just have it cut off like that. Personally, I find this system works way better. And also, as a side note for those who are making loops, like have separate parts like this so like they can be more creative with the loops and give them the individual stems like this instead of just having everything stacked like this and not giving them this, because then they can't like rearrange stuff and have fun with the loop and be creative as producers. But yeah, my throat is starting to literally go, so I'm gonna stop ranting from here. Overall, these were like the biggest tips and tricks that I wish I knew when I started as a producer. Trust me, like incorporate all these things as habits. These are not suggestions, these are things that you should be doing as a producer. They're fundamental to succeeding as one, and they're just general good habits that are gonna help you improve over time way quicker and get the results that you actually want to see. But yeah, I hope you guys like this video. Make sure to follow my Instagram and Twitter at FinnaFinesse. That's the best way to support the channel. Drum kits with the link in the description, go cop those, they're all fire. Also make sure to check out my 50k FLP/loop kit collab project that I released completely free on my YouTube with the link in the description. And yeah, that's basically it for this video. I'm out. Peace.